Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
Welcome to Season 7 of Design Nerds Anonymous, the podcast that sparks curiosity at the intersection of business and design. I'm your host, Amanda Schneider. This season, we're looking beyond our industry, exploring bold strategies from unexpected places to help us rethink how we engage and connect. Think about the last product showroom you walked into. Was it visually stunning? Now ask yourself, did it stick with you? Did it make you want to stay, explore, and engage? B2B showrooms are designed with intention, but often they get caught in the tension between aesthetics and function. There's a way things have always been done, a formula that works, if you will. But in a crowded market, is it working enough? As retail has evolved to create immersive, story-driven spaces, the best B2B brands are taking notes, blending inspiration from outside the industry to design showrooms that don't just look great, but feel unforgettable. That's exactly what we're hoping to inspire you with today. Whether you're a firm who designs showrooms, or you're on the product side trying to meet the needs of the market, there will be something in this episode for you. And to help us reimagine the future of B2B showrooms, we're bringing in two of the sharpest minds in retail and experiential design. Today, you'll meet Doug Stevens, one of the world's top retail futurists and founder of Retail Profit. He's advised global brands like Walmart, Google, LVMH, and BMW on the future of consumer experiences. He's also the author of The Retail Revival, Re-engineering Retail, and Resurrecting Retail. We'll also meet Rachel Shechtman, founder of Story, the groundbreaking retail concept that merged content, commerce, and community to create ever-changing shopping experiences. After selling her brand Story to Macy's, she became the company's brand experience officer, launching new businesses and rethinking the role of physical retail. We'll explore how the best brands are balancing aesthetics with function and what it really takes to create spaces people want to spend time in. Because in 2025, the best B2B showrooms won't just showcase products. They'll create impactful experiences. We're just getting started. A quick pause for this short break, and we'll be right back.
Rakuten is the smartest way to save money when you shop because you earn cash back at over 3,500 stores. Fashion, beauty, electronics, home essentials, travel, dining, concert tickets, and more. Your favorite stores like Lowe's, Levi's, and Nike pay Rakuten to send them shoppers. And Rakuten then passes on a part of that payment to its members as cash back. You're already shopping at your favorite stores. Why not save while you're doing it? It's a no-brainer. Membership is free and easy to sign up. Get the Rakuten app now and join the 17 million members who are already saving. Cashback rates change daily. See Rakuten.com for details. That's Rakuten. Your cashback really adds up.
All right, let's meet our experts.
I'm Rachel Shechtman. I founded a concept shop called Story in New York in 2012. And the concept behind Story was a space that had the point of view of a magazine. We changed every 1 to 2 months like a gallery, and we sold things like a store. And we did 43 different themes and store concepts in 6 years. And then I got tired, and then I sold the company to Macy's and was there for a couple of years. And now I'm entrepreneur in residence at the Brooklyn Museum. And I still do a fair amount of consulting on immersive experiences and strategy for brands like LVMH and Netflix and others.
If you had one big aha or the biggest thing you've learned from your work on all of these spaces over the last decade, what would be one thing that stands out to you?
I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is that we're the same people who live online, who live offline. We're the same people who work and go to home. We're the same people who go grocery shopping and travel. And so often we spend so much time segmenting our differences in how we work and how we function and how we strategize. But at the end of the day, it's really as simple as creating experiences that are thoughtful and unique and compelling, regardless of what sector or what audience. People always asked with Story, well, 1 month your wellness and 1 month your technology, how can a store do that? And I'm like, we read a newspaper every day and there's different sections in a newspaper, or I should say maybe online, not the actual paper.
I love that. And I think it really translates well into our theme today. We have two retail experts and we're trying to translate that to B2B and showrooms here, but the same people that shop are the same people that in their work lives are B2B buyers. Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Doug Stevens. I'm the founder of Retail Profit, and Retail Profit is a specialty consultancy that focuses on the future of retail, media, economics, and consumer behavior. I am also a columnist for the Business of Fashion, which is a publication out of the UK, and a syndicated columnist for CBC Radio Canada. I've written a few books on the future of retail, one of which I launched with Rachel's help at Story in New York City when she was still operating it. Retail Profit works with brands like IKEA, L'Oreal, Adidas, Google. We have a real eclectic and interesting range of clients. And so when I think about quote unquote retail experiences, I'm really thinking very broadly across virtually every category of goods and services, certainly not strictly tied to consumer goods. I think the thing that I've learned over the years that I've been doing this, which is I'll just say a long time now. Let's just leave it at that. I think the thing I've learned is that most executives have a tendency to choose safe and boring over risky and remarkable. My experience has been that most would rather do something that they know won't work than try something that they don't understand. And that can be a real Achilles heel for most organizations. And frankly, I think that's why most businesses today are not remarkable. They're not standout. They get up every morning and they grind away at competition with their peers. It's that rarefied few that have the courage and the fortitude to embark on things that are decidedly more risky, but ultimately way more remarkable.
I love that. What was the phrase that you said? Risky and remarkable over
safe and boring.
Safe and boring. That definitely directly translates. And I think something that we're seeing in the B2B space is really all around brand. A lot of companies get so wrapped up in features and benefits and product versus truly taking a risk that would allow their brand to stand out. I'd love it if you would take those examples maybe a little bit further and describe a brand experience that you've seen or maybe one that you've helped to create that truly captivated you. Can either of you share a story of a client or a brand that you've seen that did something that was really stand out and why?
Sure. I'll share two examples. I wasn't involved with either one of them per se, but other than being a fan and kind of proselytizing and trying to get anyone and everyone to go there, one being in New York and one being in London. If we start in New York in the West Village, there's this unbelievable store and environment by this Indian ready-to-wear and couture designer called Sabyasachi. And you walk into this space. I often tell friends in the industry, I give them the address and I'm like, do not Google it. Just go there, no expectations. And you step through the door and you are transported. You are at another time, you are at another place, down to the detail of the bathroom, to the sink, to the mirror. And they're friendly and they're warm. And it's a magical experience. So that would be my New York example. And for anyone listening who wants to go there, I will tell you this. They have this really special room that sells fine jewelry, and they have to close it an hour before the store because of the high value. They have to pack everything up. So go by 6 o'clock, not 7, so you can see the jewelry. And then my second quick other example is by a woman who I so admire and would call myself president of her fan club, is Anya Hindmarch. And in London, she has Anya's Village on Pont Street. And she has 5 different retail concepts, which, back to Doug's point, there's nothing safe about 5 stores on one block. From a cafe to a travel store to a bespoke store. She has a concept that's similar to Story that changes every month or two. And every time I go, even if I have like 10 minutes to spare, I have to go there.
Those are amazing examples. Doug, what would you add?
I'll use an example that is of a brand that everyone already knows, but I think it was an interesting journey. And first and foremost, I'll say that I don't really think there's any difference between a B2B showroom or a B2C retail store. I think it's a distinction without a difference. I think that buyers are always consumers and consumers are buyers, right? So I don't really see that there's a vast difference. The example I would bring to the table is dating back a few years now, we were approached by IKEA. And IKEA was, at that time, this is 2018-ish, was experiencing a problem that they had never had before, and that was that they weren't growing. For the first time in their history, the business was not growing. And so internally, they began to question the format. And really and truly, at IKEA, it is the format, which is the big box, 400,000 square foot format that they have taken to market very successfully, making them the largest furniture company in the world. But it wasn't performing anymore. And so we really began exploring with them different concepts that sort of leveraged some of their desired outcomes first and foremost, but also some of their strengths. And what we realized was that there were certain categories in an IKEA store that were just tremendously difficult to shop for, namely things that required a lot of hand-holding and a lot of information, kitchen, bath, and storage. We came back to them with a concept that was not a 300,000 square foot store, but rather a 14 to 20,000 square foot, what we called a design studio, which would take these categories, kitchen, bath, and storage, and bring them into this remarkably immersive environment that was all about displays and information and expert guidance and help. Completely different kind of environment. And this was so antithetical to Ingvar Kamprad, the founder's vision for IKEA, that, and I say this with all due respect, the company literally had to wait until the man passed away to launch this concept into the market. It was so different and so challenging. But today, it happens to be the growth vehicle for IKEA, and they're populating these stores, these smaller stores all around the world now. So great example to my earlier point of a brand that had the courage to really challenge themselves and to challenge everything that made them successful in order to move forward.
I love the contrast between those two examples too, from small to boutique to really immersive within a large and well-known brand. I want to take this back to something, Rachel, that you said in the pre-interview, which was, why give someone an experience they can have on their couch? And it was interesting to me that the examples you gave were really immersive, whether a small boutique in New York or, Doug, the example you gave brings in technology in some ways. Every design decision tells a story. We'll continue this one after a brief message. Let's get back into it. As we look at what's happening in retail today and lessons that we can translate to B2B, how do you balance these digital tools with maybe more analog, immersive, tactile experiences?
It's a fantastic question, and I think it's something that consumes executives within the industry. Because I think that many of them begin each year with this sort of list of objectives, right? This year, I have to use AI somehow. You know, why? Because it's in my objectives. Last year, it was virtual reality or augmented reality. And we take this kind of tech first. Let's look at the tech and find a way to shoehorn it into the experience so that it works somehow. But I think that's completely the wrong approach. I think we have to look at everything more like a stage play or a film. If you think about any great film, whether it's Jurassic Park or Forrest Gump, or the list of great films goes on, the director will rarely sit down and say, okay, this is a film about virtual reality, or this is a film about animation. What they will start with is the story. It's always about the story. If you start with the story, the questions around technology become not how can we use this particular technology, but the question becomes which technologies can best help us bring this story to life for this audience in this space. And so to Rachel's point, I get so frustrated when I go into retail spaces that are just filled with touchscreens. I think, wait a minute, hang on a minute. You actually asked me to get in the car and come here, or get in an Uber and come to this location so that I could have an experience, to Rachel's point, that I could have had on my sofa. Rather than looking at it the other way, I'll give you an example. There's a great concept store called the Canada Goose Journey Store. So Canada Goose, the outdoor wear seller, has a store in Toronto. And I call it a store. That's a misnomer. It is simply an experience, but it's an experience that is highly relevant to the brand because it's essentially telling you everything you need to know as a consumer about the brand, about the heritage, the quality and manufacturing of their goods. There's an immersive theater experience that talks to a lot of that. They use technology, but it's all to drive home the story about the brand. And then they mix the analog with the digital by providing this cold room where there's actual snow falling and you can put their garments on and go in and see how they perform in cold weather. I think the approach should be, rather than starting with the technology, ask yourself, what is the story we're trying to tell? And which technologies that exist today or that we may have to develop can help us better tell that story? Because ultimately, it's the story that the consumer's buying, not the technology.
I think now more than ever, people want a higher return on investment of their time. And they have less attention than they have ever had before. So if you are taking a second of someone's time in any way, what value are you giving them? And are you delivering that in the best possible way? I was sitting here and as Doug was speaking, I was thinking, okay, if I had to think what's a good example of technology I've seen in store that I think is phenomenal, I have to say, hands down, and I don't know if either of you have experienced this. Have you ever gone to check out at Uniqlo in the past year?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Amanda, you got to go try this.
I can't wait.
Back to Anya Heinmarch. I was just in Europe and she did a collaboration with Uniqlo that wasn't in the US. And I subjected myself going to Uniqlo on a Saturday 2 weeks before Christmas, which was bonkers. And I literally, it was like fistfuls of whatever Anya made. And all you do in less than 30 seconds, you dump it in a bag, no counting, no sorting, no someone looking over your shoulder, and you're done. I mean, it was less than 60 seconds and I was out the door. There's no supermarket checkout. There's no other POS I have experienced that is more seamless and perfect than that. I also have no idea why no one else is doing it unless they have some patent on it. But it is truly remarkable. And it's not to say technology should just be used for time-saving efficiency, but it should be used to create something that wouldn't be possible without it.
So I think Rachel sort of hit on something here. I think there was a period of time in the retail industry, certainly, but probably in many industries, where when we used this term consumer experience or customer experience or experiential retail, our minds immediately flew to these extraordinary concept experiences, sort of flagship experiences that were sticky and immersive. And I think we're emerging now from that era of experiential retail. And to Rachel's point, we're recognizing that You can have a remarkable experience, but it doesn't have to necessarily be highly theatrical, emotional. It can be, but the way I look at it is this. When I look out at the universe of experiences, I see two constellations in that universe. And the first constellation is what I call cognitive defaults or super high utility brands. We can't dispute the success of Amazon. And Amazon's experience, it may not seem like it's experiential retail, but I would argue that it really is. It's just that it's driven almost exclusively by utility, right? Every decision that Amazon makes about its brand is to deliver more convenience, faster service, easier checkout, and they just make it super simple to buy. Now, I can contrast that against a brand like Patagonia, where I think Patagonia is very much about culture. It's about bringing together consumers across shared values, and it's about communicating those values at every junction within the consumer's experience. So here you have two totally different brands, both, in my opinion, doing remarkable things with the customer experience, but not always coming at it from this sort of theatrical, emotionally grounded basis. It doesn't have to be.
There's a great quote from Chip and Dan Heath, The Power of Moments, that says something like, don't get so focused on taking the pain points out that you forget to build the peaks in. What's been interesting about even the examples you guys have given is it's definitely had these peak moments, like the Uniqlo store that Rachel mentioned, that definitely are more around efficiency. But I think everything that falls in that risky and remarkable category is more about those peaks.
An emotionally centered brand tends to be a much deeper experience. Look, Walmart is the most successful retailer on the planet, and that is just the singular focus on value. And everything they do is about value and price. It makes them very successful, but it's a very superficial experience. And it's a never-ending battle that you're constantly looking over your shoulder at who's cheaper, who's coming at us on price. Whereas when you create a deeply emotionally connected experience with a consumer, I would argue that is oftentimes much more difficult for your competitors to replicate because there's a cultural grounding to it within the organization. And again, Patagonia is a great example.
I want to go back to something that Rachel said. Rachel, you mentioned that we really have to look at an ROI on their time, that people have less attention than ever before. And I would also challenge they have more messages coming at them than ever. How do we leverage these peak moments, these experiences that help them cut through the noise to really create that risky and remarkable and memorable experience for a brand?
I think about it all the time. And to Doug's point, whether it's a showroom or a store or an exhibition, one of the things I often talk about is the cocktail party test. Describe an experience as if it were someone you met at a cocktail party. So if we were going back to Sabaisachi, right, the store I mentioned earlier, I might say she was remarkable and distinctive and had such a unique point of view. She would be so much fun to hang out with at a dinner party. That makes me want to go back, right? Now, I don't want to describe the negative experience of that, but there's plenty of stores I walk out of and I'm like, she was nice. Like, not offensive, also not jumping through hoops to host a dinner party to hang out with her again. We could sit here and we could talk about paint on a wall or tactile elements and all these different storytelling tools, which are very, very true. But I think if we reverse engineer and start with how do you want someone to feel, and then kind of take a step back and say, okay, now what are the best way to create those feelings? One thing that was a fun surprise at Story that I think can also be used with showrooms is during holiday time, we often had a line. And I'm 4 generations of retail, and my mom created a monster out of me when it comes to customer service. And so I'm apoplectic waiting in line, so I hate it when other people are waiting in line. So we made these chocolates, individually wrapped chocolates, and it said, eat this chocolate and the line will get shorter. And we handed them out to anyone in line, and they had a laugh, and they ate some chocolate, and not one person left line, even if it was 20 minutes. And so how many times do you go to a showroom appointment, and it's running late, and you're just sitting there? So what are little things that you can do to create an impression and an emotional experience before the conversation and the sales pitch even begins. And furthermore, I'd say you could even follow that same logic when someone leaves. There's lots of moments that I think could be considered impactful.
Doug, anything to add?
Your question was, how do you cut through the noise? Well, I think first of all, you have to start by identifying what the noise is. What is the typical experience in your category? Let's start there. What are most of your competitors doing? And why? Why are they doing it? I'll give you an example. I was working with a beauty company recently, and you don't have to search many beauty companies online before you recognize that the moment you land on most of their websites, there's a pop-up and it will save 15% today just by entering your email address. And this company that we were working with was no different. And so I asked them, why do you do that? They all shrugged their shoulders and they just said, because everyone else does. We don't know. There's no value in it for us. Not many people take advantage of it. My analogy in this case was, it's sort of like you meet someone at a cocktail party and in the first 5 minutes they say, hey, why don't we get married and move in together? It's like crazy. Wait a minute. I don't even know you yet. And you're asking me for my email address. So you have to identify those things that your industry does, almost whether it's by convention or out of habit, or they do it because everyone else does. And then you have to ask yourself, how can we challenge that or defy it? So how do we break through the noise? Number one, by being different, by not doing the things that everyone else does. Let's start with that. And I think the other key thing for me is that as a business, and this would apply to any business at all, you need to identify what is our fanatical purpose. What is the thing that we are fanatical about? When I think back to Story and the work that Rachel was doing, and Rachel, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I mean, you were fanatical about this notion of storytelling. And whether you were working with P&G or Scott's Miracle Grow or whoever the sponsor happened to be, you were fanatical about digging into every single little nuance of that story and bringing it to life. And every brand must find that fanatical purpose, because ultimately that's what's going to drive you to do all these unique and remarkable things that your competitors aren't doing.
Really well said. A couple final questions. If you had to give one piece of advice to, let's think about the architects and designers that might be designing these spaces, or the marketers that are trying to convince their bosses not to be boring and safe, but risky and remarkable, what would your advice be?
At the risk of sounding redundant, I think where we began this conversation, B2B or B2C, at the end of the day, we're the same person who shows up everywhere. I think marketers, architects, all service providers are so focused on what the client wants. And there's almost never a moment where they're like, could I see myself there? You're almost trained as a marketer or as a merchant. And on the one hand, I'm not going to buy every single thing I put in Story. Maybe I won't buy it, but will I learn something from it? Will it give me joy? Is there surprise and delight? Does it satiate me in another way? Even if I'm not the consumer for it, does it still have appeal to me? And so what I would say to that marketer or to that vendor or to that architect is, sure, meet the client deliverables, but take 2 seconds to say, what would get you excited about that? And it might just introduce an element that wouldn't have come into play if you didn't ask yourself that question.
Building on that, I would say there's a question that we often ask when we begin working with a brand, and it's designed to provoke and challenge. And it goes like this. If your brand is the answer, then what is the question? What is the question that your brand and your brand alone is the optimal answer to in the marketplace? Are you the most entertaining place to buy the products that you sell? Are your people the most expert and informed? Do you have the best design products, or do you have a cultural movement that you support through the sale of your products? Are you the most convenient? Are you the best value? There's no single answer that's correct. It can be any of the above, but you have to lock into what that is. Because once you discover that, and once you put all of your organizational resources and technology investments behind it, you will start to see things happen that are truly remarkable and sometimes risky. And one thing is for sure, you won't be boring.
And I love the idea of picking your words and really going for it in big, risky ways. I want to end looking at predictions for 2025. Finish this sentence for me. Companies that get ahead in 2025 will do this one thing when it comes to showrooms. What is that one thing?
Mine would be quite simple. Right now, across virtually every industry and category, people are consumed by the conversation around AI. And certainly, AI is going to permeate virtually every aspect of our professional and personal lives, and it's proving to do so already. My caution, I guess it's a caution as much as it is plea, is that organizations balance the need to understand and cautiously and carefully implement AI with the need to hire, nurture, and reward human creativity. Because I think the most powerful combination going forward is going to be the marriage of those two things. I use AI as part of my creative process, and it is a great tool, but it is only that. Just as a brush is to an artist, AI is to any creator. We must be mindful of the value of human creativity.
And I'll just say companies that get ahead in 2025 in their showrooms will be more immersive. I think it's a word we've seen show up a lot in retail or ticketed immersive entertainment experiences. I don't think we've seen it a lot in showrooms. I think showrooms haven't changed in gosh knows how long, and they could afford to. So go hire a theatrical set designer or an event designer. Think outside the box and bring in talent who's used to playing with props and objects. Find an event designer or a set designer to reimagine your showroom, I think could be really interesting.
That's fascinating and a great way to be risky and remarkable. That's going to be our quote from this episode. So, what's the biggest takeaway from today? To me, it's that playing it safe is the fastest way to be forgotten. The best showrooms won't just look good. They'll make people feel something. They'll create moments that spark curiosity, invite engagement, and leave a lasting impression. In a world where attention is scarce, blending in shouldn't be an option. The brands that win will be the ones willing to take risks, embrace bold ideas, and design spaces that aren't just seen, but experienced. Doug and Rachel made one thing clear. The future belongs to those who dare to be remarkable. If your showroom doesn't make people stop, engage, and remember you, it's time to rethink what is possible. So let's keep this conversation going. Follow me, Amanda Schneider, on LinkedIn, and be sure to connect with our guests, Doug Stephens and Rachel Shechtman, for more insights on how to push past safe and into unforgettable. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Curious about more ways to rethink your showroom? ThinkLab's Trend Spotter and Secret Shopper programs are here to guide you with in-the-field, real-time insights from Neocon. Learn more about Trend Spotters and Secret Shoppers on ThinkLab's website under the A&D tab. Design Nerds Anonymous is a proud member of the Surround Podcast Network. Special thanks to the production team, Hannah Vitti and Rachel Senator.